A very good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this 21st edition of the Together for Education webinar brought to you by Notebook. It's been over 110 days now that schools have been locked down because of the unprecedented coronavirus pandemic. We hope you and your loved ones are all staying safe. Now that most areas of the world have started unlocking, it is even more important that we follow all the safety protocols and keep us and people around us safe from this pandemic. At the beginning of this pandemic, Notebook started offering its content free of charge to all the schools so that teachers and students could make use of the content while going about their online classes. Very soon, we received requests from multiple schools to have sessions beyond the academic, discussing problems that they were facing otherwise in their day-to-day lives. That was the genesis of what has today become India's largest education webinar. Week after week, we have brought to you various topics with eminent speakers and thought leaders sharing their thoughts. Today, we bring together another topic, the power of why. All of us sitting in our classrooms have, at some point or the other, been asked to raise our hands and ask questions. The teachers who are present with us today would perhaps identify with those situations where they know certain students are holding back on their questions because they're afraid to ask in front of their peers. However, as we grow up, we face various situations in life and we realize there's a lot of power in this question, why? Once we understand the reason, the logic, the rationale behind something, it becomes much easier for us to understand, much easier for us to believe in, and much easier for us to practice. Today, Notebook is proud to announce that we have just crossed our millionth user since our launch. Week on week, having these webinars have given us access to meaningfully engage with so many schools, so many teachers, and touch so many lives that we feel humbled and inspired at the same time. Before we move forward, let me just take this opportunity to show you a small clip of one of the Notebook videos, which expands on the power of why. When we teach any topic, particularly topics in science and maths, we rely heavily on this power of why. We understand the reason, the logic, what exactly happens at an elemental level for any phenomenon to help students better understand some concepts. Here is the clip for you.
In previous videos, we discussed sound as a form of energy. That when energy is transferred from one form to another, one of the forms of energy it can be converted to is sound. When we press a doorbell, electric energy is converted to sound energy as the bell sounds. When we start a speaker, the movement of the speaker's membrane produces a sound. So sound can be produced and transmitted. Sound energy travels through water, metals, and all kinds of objects. It also travels through flesh and bones of human beings. As long as there is matter, sound can travel. Sound is transmitted as a wave. A visual representation of sound waves shows that a single molecule of air moves back and forth while sound is produced. This oscillation creates a sinusoidal curve, showing the displacement of the molecule back and forth. It is interesting to note here that sound creates a wave of particles in oscillation until it reaches the eardrums, so that the same vibration is produced in our ears and we can hear sound. So, as the example illustrates, sound is a form of energy that is transmitted through waves. These waves are created by oscillating air molecules that vibrate in points of time. Sound can travel through any object as long as there are particles. If a space is void, without atoms or molecules, sound waves cannot be transmitted. If it is a solid, sound waves can be transmitted faster as molecules are tightly placed between one another.
With that short introduction to Notebook content, it is now my privilege to introduce to you your first speaker for today. Mr. Philip Burrett retired as the Deputy Headmaster from the illustrious Doon School in Dehradun after 44 years of serving in education across various institutions. Mr. Burrett served the Doon School as Housemaster, Head of Department, Dean of Student Welfare, Dean of Activities, Deputy Headmaster, Second Master, and Acting Headmaster with great distinction. He also carried out a visioning exercise for the Doon School in the year 2011 through an in-depth study of a number of British public schools and various schools in the US. Mr. Burrett qualified as the leadership trainer at Wellington College, UK in the year 2000. He is also an athlete, an adventurer, and a naturalist. It is our privilege to present to you Mr. Philip Burrett. Sir, over to you.
Good evening, Shabayu. I hope I'm audible.
Loud and clear, sir.
Yeah, so good evening, Shabayu, Achin, Abhishek, the entire Notebook family. Good evening to our esteemed panelists and our guests who've tuned in. I have a 2-year-old grandson, and he's reached the age when he starts every sentence with why or what. Why this, what that, and he wants answers. I guess all of us went through the stage where we needed to explore and get familiar with our surroundings. But for him, the next few years of his life will be the one where he experiences the fastest and steepest growing curve. In 12 years, when he's a teenager, he will also want to know why he cannot, why he has to do this, and why he can't go out with his friends after 12. And we'll have to be able to answer his whys all his life, because we right from children to adolescents, we need explanation. The whys have to be answered. What happens after these kids join school? The learning and the spirit of inquiry slows down strangely. They stop asking why. And then the commonest words one hears in schoolrooms is keep quiet or shut up. Schools tend to slow down this learning process. Why, you may ask? Because the teachers are too focused on syllabus to be completed, exams to be done, and to guide children to a result that will get them into college. Somehow along the way, this spirit of inquiry seems to have vanished. And there's so much talk about child-centered learning. The best child-centered learning, in my view, is a learning where we focus on what the child wants. We have to answer his questions, the things that he has upmost in his mind. I was fortunate to have a headmaster who always spoke about the Greek spirit of inquiry, which is what led the Greeks to explore their islands, and they moved out from the Mediterranean and later conquered all the known lands up to the Indus. It was that spirit of adventure, the asking of the why. Again, as young teachers, we are told that education comes from the word educere, which really means the bringing out of what is already there, not putting in stuff to be regurgitated in exams. Yes, if it is true, education is the bringing out. It has to be based on the belief that children already know so much. And what we need to do is just to bring out this knowledge through a process of inquiry. Now, no child is ever a blank slate. Everybody has already a base level of understanding. We teachers need to, as I said earlier, we need to build on this. Okay. Now, the best change that ever came upon me was towards the end of my teaching, unfortunately, where I reduced what is called the TTT, teacher talk time. I reduced teacher talk time to a minimum. And so I increased child talk time. I made them talk, them answer. I focused on questioning and answering their queries. And we progressed to unearth the mysteries of the chapter. I was never bored, and I never had troublesome students when I changed this to this way of teaching. Galileo, Newton, Edison, the Wright brothers, a whole lot of these people who gave science that impetus must have been the most irritating young children in school who forever asked why. Why did the apple fall? Why did the lid of the kettle lift up? Why can't birds fly? Why can't we fly like birds? Sorry. Why do planets keep on their paths? This never-ending list of whys. The great explorers and inventors must have wanted to know why they couldn't cross the oceans, why those mountains couldn't be climbed, why the seed sprouts from the ground, why certain berries makes one ill when eaten. One of the greatest gifts a teacher or a parent can give their children is to encourage the why skills, critical thinking skills, and not to take anything for granted without questioning. Especially in the times that we live in, when there's so much fake news, there's so much propaganda, and there's a surfeit of information. One needs to sift and question, and we have to teach our children to be those irritating why questioners. In, in the area of commerce and business, many big businesses are successful because they ask the why of what they do. It is the why that what companies do that gives the vision. The vision of a company comes from the why. The the what and the how is the mission and the values. But without the why we do things, the what and how will never be very successful. Now, the way to help children ask questions is that we must ask the right questions as teachers. We need to use divergent and open-ended questions. Why do you think this? Why do you want to try that? What would happen if? These questions have no right or wrong answers. In fact, they can have many different answers. And as a result, children are more likely to use critical and creative thinking skills. We have to be more into the open-ended questions and not what color is this? Who was Akbar? These are not questions that would encourage children to ask questions. Also, when we ask questions in the class, we need to ask questions that encourage the higher order thinking, not just knowledge, who was Akbar, but comprehension, application, analysis, synthesis, and of course, evaluation. So all my teacher friends in the audience would know of Bloom's taxonomy. So I took this from there. For example, where is the Aswan Dam is a very, very knowledge-based question. How long is Lake Nasser and when was it completed? Again, is a very comprehensive question. It's comprehension. But how did the dam affect Egypt's fishing industry negatively is a deeper question. What are the shortcomings of large hydroelectric projects is another question altogether. And then, what do you feel? Was this project a wasteful or short-sighted one? Evaluate the benefits and the negatives of the project. These sort of questions that encourage children to ask questions. Of course, questions need to be updated too. And like wrong answers, they can be bad questions. There is an irony to bad questions in that they can be more difficult to answer than a good question. Now, questioning is the art of learning. Learning to ask important questions is the best evidence of understanding. There is fast surpassing the temporary endorphins of a correct answer. So what makes a bad question? Well, that depends on what you think a question should do. Should a question produce a nice, tidy answer? Should it cause students to reconsider a position? Should it force someone to go back and look more closely at how they know what they know? Or should it assess understanding? But a bad question, well, a bad question halts you, freezes you, and deflates you. The other thing that teachers have to do is to build a culture in the classroom that encourages questioning. We have to differentiate our questions. We have to ask questions in a different way. And another thing is we have to give children time for their answers. Too many of us ask a question and pick on the first hand that goes up. Well, that's a sure sign of stopping thinking, because everyone's going to be thinking that the first hand that goes up gets asked the question. We have to wait at least 10 seconds before we pick on someone to answer the question, which means the whole class has to think. Again, we ask a student a question, and then we must address the misunderstandings to the small group. Also, we need to put the students' questions back to the class sometimes. And we need to model questions and the questioning process for our students. Now, motivation. If you look at motivation, all motivation starts with the why we do things. If we get that wrong, then we lose interest and fall by the way. So whether it is a trip that we are on or a new diet or a new exercise regime, it's important to ask ourselves why we do these things. Because if we have the wrong why, then you are doomed to a very short diet plan, or your exercise routine will end in a couple of weeks. So the famous Austrian-German writer and psychiatrist, Viktor Frankl, who wrote the fantastic book called Man's Search for Meaning, and who gave the world a famous logotherapy, and who survived the concentration camps under Nazi Germany, he taught us that if we discover the why we do things, then the how we do it will easily follow. So while many of his family died in the camps, Viktor Frankl survived the camps to become a very famous psychiatrist later on, because he had discovered for himself the why of the suffering that he was going through, and he handled the how in his own way. So The why gives life a true meaning, without which it just seems to be a chore. Another man who inspires me, and I heard a TED talk recently, was Simon Sinek. He talks about the golden circle. And so I will just put on the screen the golden circle. It has the why in the middle, and it has the how and the what in the other two circles. Now, what he says is that most companies work from outside to in. They first tell you what they make, they'll tell you how they make it, and then why you must buy it. But top companies like Apple, who is the one he took, they work from the why outside. So when we start with the why, we go from inside of the circle. Why is the reason to buy, and what's merely represent the tangible product as proof of that belief. So he says that Apple, in his view, is not different technically from its competitors, but Apple communicates from the why. The why is to challenge the status quo and empower the individual. And they're challenging the status quo as a pattern repeated in all they say and do. And that's why people believe that authentic stuff comes out of Apple. For example, he says, our neocortex corresponds with the what level. This is responsible for all our rational and analytical thought and language. This allows us to look through vast amounts of facts and figures, but it doesn't drive behavior. But the limbic brain, the middle two sections that make up the limbic brain, these are not responsible for language. They are responsible for our behavior. And the why affects the limbic brain. So decision making comes from the question, why? And lastly, I want to just end with the Toyota story. Now, Toyota, as you know, is one of the most well-known and successful companies. It makes cars, amongst other things. And Toyota has this belief in the Kaizen philosophy that the Japanese believe in. Kaizen is continuous improvement. They work on improving their product every day. And at the root of this Kaizen is what they call the 5 whys. The 5 whys is a technique used to analyze in what they call the Six Sigma theory. So when anything goes wrong with Toyota, they always ask the 5 why questions. And all of us can actually work on this, because at the root of all problems is a human fault. So let's say a car battery dies. You ask why. The first why. Oh, the alternator is not functioning. The second why. Oh, the alternator brake has broken. Why? Oh, because it was beyond its useful service life and not replaced. That's the fourth why. And the fifth why? Why? Because the service was not maintained, the car was not maintained according to the recommended service schedule. So the fifth why brings you to the root cause of the problem. And everything in Toyota works on the 5 why principle. And now I'm sure Shubhayu is asking himself why I am droning on and on. So I'll end here with a big thanks to all of you who have listened very patiently. Thank you, and over to you, Shubhayu.
Thank you so much, sir. I can guarantee you that question has not crossed my mind over the last 20 odd episodes that we have heard you speak. As always, you set the reason for the entire discussion that follows. Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, I will take this opportunity to tell you that every webinar that we have had so far, we've been very fortunate to have more than 400 people attending them, be it a Wednesday session or a Saturday session. It is wonderful to see so many people who come and attend these webinars because of the quality of thoughts that get shared. It is now my privilege to introduce to you the next speaker. Our next speaker is Achin Bhattacharyya. Achin is the founder and CEO of Notebook. A chartered accountant by training, Achin was a director at Deloitte prior to starting Notebook. He has worked in India and abroad in various senior capacities in GE, PwC, KPMG, and Deloitte. Achin is an avid reader and a passionate traveler with a keen interest in economics, history, literature, and philosophy. He is a regular speaker at various forums and chambers of commerce, and also contributes articles to numerous publications regularly. He is also on the board of some of the most renowned corporates and contributes significantly to their brand strategies. Achin, over to you.
Shubha, am I audible?
Loud and clear, Achin.
Good evening, everyone. It gives me immense pleasure to welcome all of you again to today's session on a topic that is at the heart of every innovation and pursuit for excellence. While majority of people get caught up with the what and how, only a very few focus on the why. And trust me, when I say that it's the most important word ever spoken on the face of the planet. Before I move forward with the discussion, let me take this opportunity to extend a very special welcome to our esteemed panelists who are here to enlighten us further with their thoughts and experiences. Now, why translates to the power of reasoning, the power of asking yourself, why can be life-changing. Whys can help you recollect on your past, your failures, your success, your regrets. It's important how you can use the power of reasoning to construct your own thoughts and teach yourself the art of winning, the art of overcoming, the art of resolve. It could mark a beginning or a well-finished race in life. This momentum of asking yourself important questions and to others can be built early on among children or students. Major scientific inventions spurred through the whys. The invention of zero, the theory of gravitation. Every new thought or idea starts with a why. Indian history and science is full of such why. We as a nation have always emphasized over natural truths that have only revealed themselves over time. Technology has only been a miracle in recent times, and then followed all experiments. Experiments are only guided by these whys, commonly termed as hypothesis statements. Statistics accepts or rejects the hypothesis that is framed out of a why. Similarly, teachers also need to constantly re-evaluate their teaching styles with whys. It's always a two-way process among students and teachers. Every relationship evolves with better and with self-critical whys. Why does my child find more interest in English than science? Perhaps a simple whys that can be life-changing for the child. Parents are able to spot the child's specific interests and guide him or her early on. There is no exception, there's no expectation, rather, I'll say, that the child will be an exceptional engineer. So whys are important. You may want to expand your own horizon by defining your why, break the limitations of your mind. So I feel there's no age barrier to when you are able to find this why for yourself. Now, most people, so when I say that most people don't know about the gentleman in the frame, Samuel Pierpont Langley. So who is he? Before coming to that, I'll say when people are asked why their business endeavors fail, they say undercapitalized, I got the wrong people, and bad market conditions. Now let's explore the myth and see how a why can change it all. Back in times when figuring out how planes would fly was one of the most important things, somewhat like the dot-com bubble in 2000s. Samuel was one of the most talked about men who was entrusted by the War Department to figure this out. And he had everything going for him. He was given $50,000 by the War Department for this purpose. Thus, money was no problem. He held a seat at the Harvard and was extremely well connected. He knew all the big minds of the day. He hired the best talents money could find, and the market conditions were fantastic. The New York Times followed him everywhere. Everyone was rooting for him. So my question is then, how come we have never heard about him? Because few hundred miles away in Dayton, Ohio, the Wright brothers, namely Orville and Wilbur, were driven by a cause, purpose, belief. They really wanted to change the course of the world by figuring out the flying machine. They had none what we consider recipe for success. They had no money. They paid for their dreams from the proceeds of their bicycle shop. Not a single person in the Wright brothers team had college education. Not even Orville and Wilbur. And the New York Times followed them nowhere. Samuel wanted to be rich and famous, so he worked for the results. And his team worked for the paycheck. Wright brothers team worked with them with their blood, sweat, and tears. and rest we all know is history. So when you talk about what you believe, you attract those who believe what you believe. Now, to explain the power of why, to demonstrate the power of why, I'll take you to Canada. The legendary Muhammad Ali put it wonderfully when he told an opponent, knocked down is not knocked out. You get up, you stand, you fight. And nothing proves this more than this story. So, Terry was a young Canadian athlete, decided to embark on a cross-Canada run. After 143 days, he was unable to continue. But by then, he had run around 5,300 kilometers. This works out to running a full marathon every day, almost. By itself, this is an extraordinary achievement. But when you consider that he accomplished this with only one leg, the story begins to take an entirely different character. His other leg had been amputated because of cancer, which was diagnosed in 1977. He was a promising athlete. He continued to run using an artificial leg. Now, Terry crawled the last few kilometers because the cancer had spread. There wasn't a single dry eye that day. People were cheering for him from the sidelines. People were cheering from clubs, from bars, from schools, from offices. They're all rooting for him. He died in June 81, 1 month short of his 23rd birthday. Terry decided to use adversity as an opportunity and embarked on his marathon of hope to raise funds and awareness on cancer. So, why did he do what he did? Now, let's come to the why part, right? Terry could not let the cancer simply destroy him and the many others who suffered from the disease. He wanted to make a difference. He wanted to make a statement by raising public awareness and research funding. It was his singular motivation. It is what gave him passion. That one single thought and idea defined him. It is the power of why that stands out. Terry knew what he wanted, but more importantly, why it mattered so much to him. Everything else became peripheral. He accepted he would die, but decided that he would not lose his willpower to cancer. Now, from Canada, let's go back to US. Washington, August 1963. In the summer of 1963, 250,000 people showed up on the Lincoln Memorial in Washington to hear Dr. King speak. Now, they sent out no invitations or saved the dates. This speech was a defining moment of the civil rights movement and among the most iconic speeches in American history. He didn't tell people what needs to change in America. He told them what he believed in, and people who believed in what he believed made the cause their own. They came for themselves, as they believed in it. They traveled by bus for hours and stood in the sun in Washington in August. It wasn't about black versus white. In fact, 25% of his audience was white. Towards the end of the speech, Dr. King departed from his prepared text for a partly improvised theme, I Have a Dream, prompted by Mahalia Jackson's cry, Tell them about the dream, Martin. In this part of the speech, which most excited the listeners and has now become, most famous, King described his dreams of freedom and equality arising from a land of slavery and hatred. With a single phrase, Dr. King said, he joined Jefferson and Lincoln in the ranks of men who have shaped modern America. The speech was ranked the top US speech of the 20th century in a 1999 poll. And the speech that he gave was, I have a dream and not I have a plan. Now closer home, Narayanan Krishnan, an award-winning chef with Taj Hotels, was all set to go to Switzerland for an elite assignment. He witnessed a horrific sight in 2001 in Madurai that transformed his life. A homeless elderly person was lying by the side of the road, forlorn, starving, and deprived of all human dignity. Deeply distressed, Krishnan started the Akshaya Trust that cares for the homeless, the abandoned, the elderly, the sick, and mentally challenged. He serves breakfast, lunch, and dinner to 425 indigent and elderly people in Madurai. He also provides haircut and shaves to give dignity to those he serves. He was selected as one of the top 10 in CNN Heroes 2010 list. The character Narayanan Krishnan, played by Jayaprakash in the 2012 Malayalam film Ustad Hotel, is based on him. At a TED Talk, he referred to it as the joy of giving. It is the one thing that motivates him. So again, power of why. Now, let's go to Everest. Eric was the first blind person to climb Mount Everest. He referred to this as the adversity advantage, through which everyday challenges can be transformed into everyday greatness. Thus, when we are sure of our why, failures become building blocks. The majority of us live a life without purpose or the why. Thus, we start living the dreams of other people. Now, we come to Alan Watts, the great Buddhist scholar, once asked his graduating class what they would like to do with their life if money were no object. Once money was removed from the equation, the students said they wanted to be carpenters or poets or writers or wanderers. The same students abandoned their dreams and said they wanted to be engineers or lawyers or chartered accountant once money became part of the equation. Once action is devoid of motivation, it becomes routine. It lacks passion. Over time, it becomes alienating and dehumanizing. There are two different types of decision making. First type, if I may say, fast, unconscious, automatic, everyday decisions, which are error prone. And second, which I may say, are slow, conscious, laborious, complex decisions, and which are reliable. Now, imagine if we had a very convenient switch through which whenever we wanted, we would have easily, seamlessly shifted from fast to slow mode of decision making, not only for us, but for our friends and family. Now that switch to shift from fast to slow mode of thinking is asking yourself why. Not only for you, but for your friends and family. When you ask why, at times more than once, they move to a more conscious mode of thinking and you perhaps have better results. Now, to build on to Burrett sir's thought, he discussed about, I think very important point he raised about Apple as a case study. Now, before that, I think most organizations and people think, act, and communicate outside in. It's obvious. We go from the clearest thing to the fuzziest thing. But the inspired leaders and the inspired organizations, regardless of their size or industry, all think, act, and communicate from inside out. Let me explain. Every single organization in the planet know what they do. 100%. Any company, any organization, any person, they know what they do, right? 100%. Some know how they do it. What you call as your differentiating value proposition or USP. So they are successful, at least to a limited extent. But very few people and organizations know why they do what they do. And by why, I don't mean to make a profit. That's a result. Always the desired result. But why I mean, what is your purpose, your cause, your belief? Why does your organization exist at all? This explains why some organizations and some leaders are able to inspire while others can't. I think very wonderfully, Burrett sir gave the example of Apple. Now, moving on, motivation, I believe, is the key. What distinguishes us is our motivation. We need to ask ourselves, does the why make us want to push harder and go that extra mile? Does it allow us to accept the bitterness and failures, the rejections, even the scorn and contempt, the negativity that we might be surrounded with? Does it inspire us and in the process also inspire those around us? Or is it something we are unable to relate to and identify with? Answer to these questions will chart out our path for the future. I sincerely thank all of you for listening to me patiently. I look forward to the views of the distinguished panel. Over to you, Shubhayu.
Thank you so much, Achin. Thank you for sharing those wonderful thoughts. To all the members in the audience today, it is the power of why, as articulated by Achin right now, that drives us at Notebook to do greater and better things every passing day. With that, ladies and gentlemen, it is now time to introduce our guest speakers for today. Our first speaker today is Ms. Rekha Kapur. At the moment, Rekha Kapur is the principal of SSPM's Sri Sri Ravi Shankar Vidya Mandir in Borivali, Mumbai. Through her 32 years of experience in school and degree college, and with 21 years as a school head, she has contributed immensely to institutes like St. Xavier's, Ryan Institutes, Kundan Vidya Mandir, Gitanjali Public School, Convent of Jesus Mary, etc. Her vision is to sculpt children as global citizens having social, emotional, creative acumen and be ready for the opportunities of the 21st century. She is working as lead academic executive, member of the Academic Council, academic auditor for Pan India at SSRVM to make her vision a reality by creating opportunities for children across the country. She believes that we grow best when we grow together, and with this in mind, she is nurturing and handholding the first BMC CBSE school in Mumbai through facilitating training and knowledge sharing. An environmentalist at heart, she dedicates her time for the upliftment of the environment and the community. She is associated with various NGOs like River March for cleaning of the river Dahisa, Khushiyan for free food for the underprivileged, the Beach Warriors who are involved in cleaning of the Gorai Beach, and Zero Slums Mumbai initiative to ensure that Mumbai does not have any more slums. She is also a gold medalist in MSc for achieving the first rank in the Punjab University. It is indeed our pleasure and privilege to have Ms. Kapur with us today. Ma'am, over to you.
A very good evening and to all the panelists, participants and Team Notebook. I'm very thankful to the Team Notebook for giving me an opportunity to express my views on today's topic, the power of why. It was the Raksha Bandhan is round the corner and I was at the billing counter of a mall and suddenly my eyes caught a poster and which states that if you are a 100 customer, you will get 10 chocolates free. Or there is an option, you can also go in for 20 chocolates, but for that you have to only pay 60 rupees. But you all are aware the word free, how it conquer us and how it initiate us to go in for free items. But I asked why I should go for the free, why I should not go in for the other one. When I can, what will you do in this time? I calculated that if I go for the second option of getting 20 chocolates, my profit is 140 rupees. Whereas in the first case, my profit was only 100 rupees. So this is the power of why, the asking the curious. We are aware that all children are born curious at all ages. At the age of 2, a child will ask the parents why I should take bath every day, why I have to wear shoes, why I can't roam like that. But as the child grows in the age group of 4 to 6 and a parent happens to take a child for a walk in a park, the child will ask why children are running, why the flower is red, why the birds are flying, why can't I fly? There will be a series of questions which the child will ask us. And to my astonished, there will be so many questions which I have never thought or I have never observed. So this is that all children are curious. If we bring a toy to a toddler, maybe a pre-primary class, he's very curious. A new toy has come to him, and if the toy is moving and making some noise or funny noise, he will try to dismantle the toy. We must have noticed this. The child will dismantle the toy and will be very eager to find why it is moving and why the sound is coming. We all know the child tried to assemble it back, and maybe he is successful or he is not successful. Sometime when the father is going or a mother is going to fill the gas in a car, they take the children also. Now, when the gas is filled up and the mother says or the father says, okay, I'll go for the air pressure of my tires. They go to the air pressure place, and the father or mother says that, okay, check the air pressure. He says it is little less. So the father says, okay, balance the air pressure. So he fills little bit of air and the pressure becomes okay, and they drove away. Now the next is this quiz. Now I'll go take you to one quiz. Now this quiz is, now see, the truck has been stuck in a tunnel very badly, and the people were arranged, the toolbox was arranged, the mob of workers were arranged, and the tow truck was also arranged. But the truck didn't move 1 inch front and 1 inch back, 1 inch side. All of them failed. Suddenly there was one child also observing it there. So then they asked, supposing this question was asked me also. So I told that we can remove the tires, we can remove. So, but this child was there. He was more brilliant because he was more curious than me. So he says, why don't we reduce the air pressure in our tires? Automatically, the truck will come little down and you can pull it front or pull it back. This is the power of why and experiential learning, which was given by his parents to the child. So that's how he becomes curious and a problem-solving child. But so in this case, now we are aware the curiosity of a child is decreasing as the child grows. There are two reasons. Firstly, when he asks parents, parents do not have time to kindle his curiosity or answer his questions. They don't have time. And the child moves to the school. Most of the time, the teachers are busy in completing their syllabus. And in that case, the teacher may have a time or may not have a time. Or maybe the teacher is not competent enough to answer the question. So in that case, his curiosity is decreasing day by day. And one fine day, the child will become a rote learning. Now, I cannot give the entire blame to our education system and how busy we are. To some extent, it is to the education system which Britishers gave us long time back. And that was what? To produce Indians as clerks or to work in factories, or they wanted children to be produced like a product is produced in a factory, the replica of the same thing again and again and again, with no creativity, with no critical thinking, with no decision power at all. Now, India is a land of learners. Before the British era, there were people from all over the world used to come to India to learn. And we had great, scientists at that time also. Now, if we talk about, there are many inventors like Wright brothers, Mendel, Michael Faraday, and Edison, who never had a formal education. Then, how did they invent such big, big things? It is all because of the power of why, and that is curiosity. They were curious. They wanted to invent something. They wanted to solve their problem. And that led them to the invention. So many people have seen an apple falling, but it was only Isaac Newton who went ahead and found out the laws of gravitation, because he was curious. He wanted to know why it is coming down. Why doesn't it go up? So it was, and similarly with the Archimedes, whenever he entered his bathtub, the water used to come out. So it made him curious to find out why it happened. And that led to a curious. Now, if a child is curious, then he is observant. I repeat, if a child is curious, he is asked why, he is curious, he is observant. And this leads to invention. To continue it further, it is important to ask why before accepting a statement in a book or said by a renowned person. Whatever is written in the book or is said by the newspaper, we should question ourselves why. Then only we will get the clear picture, or we'll get the authentic news. Sometimes the news is fake also. How to increase curiosity? Let's talk about them in childhood. Now, a minor accident took place. A child of 12 years happened to be there. He asked why the accident took place. Was the driver driving very fast, or the brakes failed, or someone else was trying to cross the road without looking left or right? What can I do to avoid this accident in my life? How can I help the person in this situation? If I meet the accident, what can I do in that situation? Now, this is all preparing for life skill. The questioning is very important for a teacher. Now, another innovative method of generating curiosity is a teacher enters the class, she takes the book and she starts a new lesson, and she doesn't go to the first page of the lesson. She goes to the last page of the lesson, and she is aware that all the lessons are related to our environment, nature, relationship, our body, or our social events, or our society. So she started asking questions from the exercise, and to your surprise, 50% of the children questions were answered by the children. And the remaining 20%, how she covered? She started coaxing the children by giving them hint. And that led to the children to answer, to think their Y caps, and they started answering the question. And in the end, it was so easy for the teacher. She just had to do the recap and the lesson got over. This is the way during the pandemic, the teachers are supposed to kindle the curiosity, and this is called self-oriented learning. The time has come when our students should be doing self-oriented learning. There is another method which teachers can follow. Let it be, the teacher divides the class into two. To one half of the students, she gave one topic and she said, prepare the best question on this topic, as many as you can. The next half, she tells, okay, you thoroughly prepared this topic, go take and explore it also, and a little more on the Google or on various search engine, and come well prepared. And in the class, what is happening? The questions are discussed, and the one group asks the question, the other answers, and the lesson gets over. This is also helping us in self-oriented learning. I am a science teacher and love to teach especially middle school children. First of all, my first aim in the class is teach students how to ask a quality question. Children ask so many questions, but how to ask a quality question? And I have always answered, or I have always attend to the questions of the children which are posed at me. So there are two ways of handling the question, which why question or HUT question, which the children ask me. So one way of answering is that I tell children, I give the answer to the child. A child is also satisfied. I am also satisfied. But in this case, if you are a true educator, this type of answers, the memory is very shortly. In another word, you tell the child, okay, I have understood your question, and this will come under so-and-so law, or under so-and-so lesson, or under so-and-so principle. Why don't you explore it on the Google? And tomorrow when you come to school, we will have a discussion on it, and let everybody knows what you are asking. And next day a proper discussion happen, and this discussion will lead to a long time of memory, which is really a need of the hour. Every day, 1 or 2 students have been asked to share some innovative questions. So students come prepared. Why they come prepared? Because in my class, I have attached a kind of a chart, a board, where whichever child will ask a very good question, his name will go on the board. And secondly, whatever the curiosity a developing question he asks, that question with the name goes in his profile book. We are maintaining a profile book. So this it enters the child profile. So children get inspired. They get motivated to ask questions. So that's how every day I have 1 or 2 children who ask me questions. And this is how I am kindling, I am nurturing their power of why. Now, most of the parents, when the child comes home, they ask, how was your day in school? But according to me, the parent should ask, did you ask a good question today? That should motivate the students to think creatively and to ask motivating questions. Now, there are certain questions which will, see, I have given incomplete question. You can add to it, but I'll do couple of them with you. What would happen if there is no electricity in your house? What did you think when your grandmother came to your house and that day the lift was not working? Why did she or he react in that manner? And so on. Now we all know another way of kindling the curiosity or power of why is reading. Don't just teach your children to read. Teach them to question what they read. Start a lesson. Now start a lesson with curiosity, asking why. Now I'll start why, one question, that are you aware that there is a country where there are no mosquitoes and there is no malaria? The curiosity of the children will go up. In another class, the children can be asked, if we are doing a topic on conservation of natural resource, we can ask them a question. Now, supposing what will happen if there is no water? What will happen if there is no fuel for your car? There is no fuel for your gas stove, if there is no electricity. So the curiosity for conservation of the natural resource will develop. The next idea what I want to give is the learning should be project based. Now in this, the teacher should not give a topic on her. She should only give the topic and tell the children to find out the topic on their own. Let the child comes for the project topic to the children, and then the teacher can decide on it. Open-ended questions bring curiosity, and instead of close-ended, open-ended question bring the curiosity. In the pandemic, what parents can do? Parents can tell their child, they can demonstrate rather how a salad is made, how a tea is made, or how rice is made. And let the children frame as many questions on why on that. And this is one work we can give. As a teenager, involve them in discussing current affairs and also in small or big decision which the family sit together and make. It is one day a child can be told that today you are going to decide the menu, and you have to make sure that that all the ingredients are there. So this is how we are kindling the curiosity, the accountability, the responsibility of the child. Now my main question is why we have to develop curiosity? Why the power of why is so important? We all are aware that we are moving ahead to 21st century, 21st century, where 80% of the jobs which are existing now will not be there. Those jobs will be taken up by the robots. Then what will our people do? Another jobs will be created for them, which will require the 21st century skills like creativity, critical thinking, innovation, decision making, problem solving, accountability, tech savvy. Now these are the questions. Now if we prepare our children for the power of why, I'm sure they can be good creators, good innovators, good critical thinking they will have, they will be more creative, and they will be ready for 21st century. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you for sharing those wonderful thoughts on curiosity with us. We at Notebook make it our active endeavor to inspire every child to be more curious about the topics. And if our videos can kindle that natural curiosity within every child, I think we would have served our purpose. Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. Ladies and gentlemen, it is now my privilege to introduce to you your next speaker. Ms. Asna Nafeez is a postgraduate in zoology with a professional degree in education. She is currently the principal of the DPS-Modern Indian School in Doha, Qatar. She started her career as a teacher at the TVS Lakshmi School and later served as the principal at the Crescent Girls Residential School in Tamil Nadu. A young achiever, she achieved this distinction at the age of 35 only. Ms. Nafeez has the distinction of being selected to travel to Brazil as a member of an international group study exchange program under the aegis of the Rotary Club. In September 2010, she came to the shores of Doha, Qatar, where she became the principal in 2011. And under her leadership, the school has received the accreditation from the Ministry of Education in Qatar. Mrs. Nafeez has taken part in various panel discussions, especially on inclusion, and has won the Award of Excellence as the principal of DPS Modern Indian School for producing excellent results in grade 10 and 12 board exams for 6 consecutive years. She has received letters of appreciation from CBSE and the Ministry of HRD India for encouraging inclusion in her schools. She has expressed her passion in inclusive education in various educational magazines. She has attended and conducted several professional teaching programs on leadership and communication, career guidance, value education, counseling, etc. She is passionate about inclusion and understands that respecting and promoting diversity is one of the major roles of leadership in today's world. She is often referred to as the people's principal. Ma'am, it's a privilege to have you with us today. Over to you.
Thank you so much to the team of Notebook. A very good evening to all the esteemed panelists, viewers, and the members of the Notebook team. I don't see why we can't realize the importance of why in today's world, because as we progress and we have an information overload, literally from all directions, we suddenly have realized that it's important to ask the question why. There is too much knowledge pushing us in various directions, and we've started to believe whatever we see. And that's something extremely dangerous. And as school leaders, as teachers, it becomes extremely important for each one of us to realize the potential that we as teachers and educators have in inculcating this sense of why amongst children. Children definitely are born curious. They are inherently the ones who are asking the question why. But as we and we move on and progress as young children moving to schools, we realize this question of curiosity is somewhere lost. We kind of forget that children are born with this curiosity, and by getting them educated in schools, sometimes we tend to make them forget that it is curiosity that has led to human development, be it in any particular field that you can see. All progress that man has made is because man was curious. Man always asked the question why or why not, and why if, what if. So these questions are something that we have to make it possible. Like, for example, too often I feel that we as teachers miss out on opportunities in cultivating this amongst our individual students, because there is this whole fear that we have to complete curriculum. Repeatedly, I keep speaking to my staff and keep telling them that it is not important to deliver curriculum alone. It's important to build on all these skills that are so essential. All great leaders, heads of organizations, CEOs, all of them are people who have been curious and who have maintained that curiosity as they grew up too. Now, I would just be talking more from the point of view of my personal experiences as a teacher. I remember very early when I started off as a biology teacher, and I had entered a classroom in grade 6 teaching the structure of amoeba. Very often this topic is one of the easiest topics that we teach in biology. And I thought I was completely equipped to handle the class. I went in and I started delivering the lesson as I drew the amoeba, and I started drawing various parts of an amoeba inside. I drew a lot of circles for the nucleus, the nucleolus, the vacuoles, the contractile vacuole, the food vacuole. And I instructed my students to just follow and draw accordingly. Very surprisingly, one child stood up and asked me a very pertinent why question. He asked me, why should I draw circles? Why can't I represent my vacuoles as squares, as rectangles, as triangles? Why should I draw only circles? I was a very new teacher, a young teacher, one who had just entered into teaching. And I was stumped at that question, because I thought to myself, why on earth did I not ask this question to my teachers? Why did I just simply not question what is there in the textbook? And for a minute, I didn't know what answer to give. I just told the child, it's a beautiful question. It's a wonderful question. I've never asked this question to myself. I should have asked this question when my teacher was teaching, but I just chose to believe whatever she was telling me without even understanding the why part of it. I just told him, give me some time. I'll go back, refer and come back after the lesson is done. I encouraged the questioning. I did not say just shut up and sit down, which most of us tend to do. We do not have the time. Don't ask me these unimportant questions. These are not required. But it made me think. When I came out, I sat down and I started thinking. I said, why was I not able to answer this simple question? And it is again reflects on how we plan our curriculum. If we could make it more interdisciplinary. It was a question of physics. It was a question of stability of an object which is more spherical in nature. I could have related it to geography. I could have related it to astronomy, where you see all spherical structures in the environment, in nature. Most structures that have to be suspended in spherical shape, and they are more stable. But I don't know why. A young child, and I can say that that is what is curiosity, that we normally kill in children if we do not encourage good questioning in the classroom. So keep telling yourself that it's important to encourage questioning in a class. As a teacher, it's one of the priority points that you make children understand the reason behind why questions are important. Now, we say that every day we need to tell our students that, you know, your questions are valued, they're very important. Like I remember one more lesson that I was teaching, and I was already a mother of two, and I was teaching how the entire fetus is formed and how the fetus is suspended in amniotic fluid, the various stages of development, and one meek little child. And let me tell you, curiosity is not supposed to be with just one child or two children. It has to be with everybody in the class. And this meek looking child, who was like a frightened rabbit who never asked questions, raised a hand and said, "Ma'am, if the fluid is all around the fetus, why doesn't it suffocate and die? Why doesn't the fetus have amniotic fluid entering into its nose, ears, and everywhere else?" And I was just thinking that, listen, I have been through 2 pregnancies, I've delivered, but then somehow this question is something that we don't normally question. We just listen, we hear, we never challenge. And I think in today's world, it's very, very important to challenge knowledge or information that is coming to you from all directions and learn for yourself. The only way that probably we can encourage such behavior is giving children the opportunity to read a lot, to ask valuable questions right from childhood, encourage that learning curve where children learn by asking, or children learn by doing, or creating projects, explorations, so that they come up with answers for the why. Because when you do something and you ask the why and get an answer, knowledge is going to stay with you for a longer time. It's usually, if you look at any world, whether it's a corporate world, it's the education world, it's any part of the discovery and inventions, it's answers that are not important. It's questions that are important. When children are at school and they're doing small projects and they ask those questions, "Why, ma'am, why can't we do this way? Or why should we do it that way?" And then that's the learning that will lead to development of knowledge, development of, you know, awareness and progress in society. I think it's very, very important that we teach our children how to frame questions. And to do that, you can plan your curriculum around how you teach a topic, whether you arouse curiosity, because unless you are not curious, you're not going to make children curious. If you're going to say, you know, listen, I have to finish my curriculum, I have to deliver this much, I'm to complete the curriculum, the learning outcomes are these, and you yourself are never curious, you have to appear curious to your children so that your children learn to wonder like how you wonder about things. Like, for example, whenever I used to introduce the topic of a cell inside a biology class, I often used to ask them a very irrelevant question. I used to ask them, how would you define death? What according to you is death? And this is for senior students of 9 and 10, when we have to go into the details of how a cell works and what are the different types of cells. I normally ask them, I'm curious, what is your opinion about death? And they would look at me and ask, ma'am, you're going to teach us something about a cell. Why are you bothered about death at this moment? And that sparked a whole array of conversations on what death is. And when I finally said, probably I feel death is when a few cells, a handful of cells among the millions of cells that make us, decide to give up on others, other cells, death happens. And then we introduce the topic of death, as the topic of cell. So the why, what, when, where, these are extremely important to establish curiosity and a sense of wonder among the children. Now, as we move on, it's very important that as parents, as teachers, we continue to encourage our children to think differently, to be curious, just not bother about answers and getting scores. Because most curriculum that we teach it in such a way, it's not about the content of the curriculum, it's the way we deliver that becomes important. Are we delivering only that the child should score good marks, or are we delivering for a reason beyond that? Now, if I look at the case of my own child, my own son, who was in his 5th year of architecture, and he calls me and tells me from India that, Ma, I'm going to go to the Himalayas on the bike. And this is going to be before the examinations, the final year exams. And I'm like, why can't it be after the final year exams? He says, but what is the problem if it is before that? Do you have an issue, Ma? I think you have not done your why study well. And I asked him, but why are you in such a hurry? He said, you should understand that there is a certain season in which you can drive or ride on those highest motorable roads of the world. And that season will not wait for my examination. It will finish off and I will lose 1 year in not being able to travel. The same boy took up a project for the 5th year and he called it the Stairway to Heaven. When he called me and he told me that he's doing a project on redesigning Islamic burial grounds, I was actually shocked. I was taken aback. I said, when the whole world is opening up to so many beautiful things like buildings, sports centers, malls, hospitals, why have you chosen something as this? And he said, the reason why he has chosen, the why that he put to himself, he said, was that if we say that these are our final resting homes, why not design them properly? And I was actually stumped at the quality of thinking that happens amongst young children. Why I'm saying this is that young children have the ability to think. All they need is a little support from all of us. If we are able to support them a little bit, we really are able to think, make them think out of the box and continue with the why. Now, this project of his won him a national award, and he came back saying that, do you understand why I chose this? Because we somehow failed to see the very obvious around us. Now, when this topic was discussed with me from the notebook team, I thought we must be able to relate it to the current pandemic. Now, the current pandemic brought in a complete shaking up of the education system. All of us who were very, very happy with what we were achieving in a talk and chalk or a classroom environment with smart boards had to suddenly reorganize ourselves with hardly any time given to us to move towards e-learning. The only question that at that point of time we asked ourselves is, why is it important to continue education or give uninterrupted education to our children? And what if we stop? And what are the ways, or what are the means? Why is it not possible for us to do it? And then we came up with solutions as to how we could move online and educate our children. After which, we started quickly thinking on the whys. What are the other ways in which we can reach out to our children? How do we keep our children engaged through holistic development, even through online teaching and learning? A lot of activities were planned, a lot of new ideas were generated, and quite a few of them were led by children. Children today at my school are able to think differently. They have come up with various ideas of, online activities wherein they have questioned themselves as to what are the barriers that are stopping them and how to overcome them. While we were doing this, it was the month of Ramadan, and normally in the month of Ramadan in this part of the world, a lot of charity work is done, and our school had this wonderful image of creating a lot of charity work during the month of Ramadan where we involved our children. So this time we did something called as the online charity, and we were able to reach out to a lot of people because our teachers were willing to contribute greatly to this cause. And I think it is this question of why not? Why can't we? That led to this. It's not always that every why needs an answer. Why is a good thing. Your curiosity remains the top priority, but too much of why also may lead to issues. So you should be able to rationalize as a teacher as to where your child should be, his interest or her interest should be directed. Knowing your child's interest is extremely important to arouse curiosity so that you can plan your learning exercises and teaching exercises around the points that activate or initiate some kind of interest in inspire some interest in the child. Now, I won't go into too many details of why is important. Why is important, and that's why we are all here. It's important because so many organizations are doing extremely well by asking themselves that question of why. And I think we wouldn't be progressing where we are without the why. And we as educators have the power to continue to bring in more progress into this world by igniting the minds of our young learners, but just allowing them to be curious, not giving importance to only answers, but giving importance to questions too. Thank you so much, and it's over to Team Notebook.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you for sharing those wonderful thoughts with us. I could not help but remember George Bernard Shaw's quote, "Others see things as they are and ask why. I imagine things that never were and ask why not." Wonderfully put, ma'am. And on a more personal note, ma'am, would love to meet your son someday. I'm a bit of a nutcase about two-wheelers myself, having been to Khardungla a couple of times. So I completely understand where he was coming from.
Yeah, he
Please
celebrated
encourage
his
that.
21st birthday on the highest motorable road.
I would say that's a very befitting birthday. Thank you so much, ma'am.
Yeah, welcome.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is now my privilege to introduce to you your next speaker. Our next speaker is Dr. Monica D'Souza. Dr. D'Souza is the principal of the SKS International Gurukul Kurukshetra. She is also the state secretary of the Private Schools and Children's Welfare Association, Haryana. Also, she holds the role of the district president of the Citizens' Rights Protection in Kurukshetra. It is our privilege and pleasure to have Dr. D'Souza with us today. Ma'am, over to you. Dr. D'Souza, are you there? Ma'am, I think you're still on mute. If you could just unmute yourself, please. Ma'am, really sorry. Yeah.
Yes, sorry.
Perfect, ma'am.
Good evening, all distinguished panelists over here and all the knowledgeable participants. I'm also very grateful to Notebook School for giving me this opportunity to present a few thoughts on the power of why, which is also my favorite topic. So being teachers, we know, we have learned and we have catered to many why of the questions in our day-to-day life. So as teachers, as principals, and coming in contact with human persons every day. So why this question of asking why? This will increase our knowledge. So as Socrates says, the only true wisdom consists in knowing that you know nothing. So Socrates puts emphasis on knowledge all his life because he believed that the ability to distinguish between right and wrong lies in people's reason, not in society. Learning was the only thing Socrates was concerned about. So there is also a theory of Kent, who says, he mentions two faculties of the mind that are involved in the knowledge process, namely sensibility and understanding. We have two faculties, he says, one sensibility and one more is understanding. Through the former, that is sensibility, the objects are given, while through the latter, the objects are thought of, the receiving faculty. That of sensibility deals with space and time as pure intuition. On the other hand, the thinking faculty, that of understanding, treats concepts or categories. Thus, these faculties of the human reason presupposes the two elements of knowledge. So, we have sensibility and we have understanding here. Why we have in our classrooms also, we can see very few children ask us questions. Why fewer questions? Because in the houses also, we tell our children, when they ask 1, 2, 3 or 4 questions, we get fed up. We say enough, or we divert them from asking questions. So teachers also, we have to complete our syllabus and we say, give me answers. We don't want much of the questions. And the bosses in the company say, my way or the highway. So I say, I don't have time to ask questions. So there is a fear of asking question, what if I am wrong? if I ask question, it may be wrong. So the child becomes very frightened and it doesn't ask questions. So wrong assumptions can have painful consequences. We can see that our human nature has many challenges. Like we have a particular perception of our life because of our bringing up in the family, our culture, our atmosphere, our surrounding, our environment. So what happens is our heredity as well. So we have some kind of perception and bias in our mind. So that also comes as a challenge for asking questions. So we need to be more, as educators, we need to be more kind to these people, especially those who do not ask. So we need to be more kind to these students and make them create an atmosphere to ask questions. I'm speaking of, relating these theories to the classroom. The way it is always been done. So we have seen a particular way of doing a particular thing. So we find it difficult to shift our mindset from one thing to the other. So we find difficult to ask a question. In this regard also, we have difficulties in asking questions. Lack of clarity. We do not have lack of clarity, so we don't ask questions. Because it is not clear to us, the child is not knowing what you are teaching, so the child doesn't ask questions. So Albert Einstein, one of my favorite scientists, who says, if I had an hour to solve a problem and my life depends on the solution, I would spend the first 55 minutes determining the power of question to ask, a proper question to ask. I could solve the problem in less than 5 minutes. So we understand how important is the power of asking why. So all other speakers have already spoken what I had prepared. So I just want to say that if we start asking questions, if we create this atmosphere of asking questions to the students, we can also make them very brilliant thinkers. We need to make them thinkers. So as I said, the perspective, I'll just speak about a little bit of perspective and bias. That is Mickey Mouse theory, it is called as. Some of you must be knowing that. So all knowledge is in a circle. So, okay, what I know is part of that circle. What they know is part of the circle. The knowledge remains. More than half of the things I do not know, or that my student also do not know. And afterwards, the perception where I'm standing as a teacher with all this background is totally different than my child's or my student's background. So that also depends how I deliver my thing to that child. So knowledge is there, but I try to attain that knowledge in certain amount. Also, my child also has a kind of certain knowledge about a thing. Consider a thing A. So I have knowledge, my child also has the knowledge about this. So I have my perception, my child has his or her perception. So we have in that knowledge circle, part of it, maybe half of it we are able to explore. So another half of it we need to explore day by day, and we need to give the child space to atmosphere to explore and try asking questions. Also, another thing Albert Einstein says, the important thing is to never stop questioning. So we need to ask we need to encourage our students always to ask questions. So in Indian philosophy also we have this neti neti, a Sanskrit expression which means not this, neither this nor that. So which means it is a keynote to Vedic inquiry. They used to say not this, not this, not this. Sometimes they say something is, yeah, this is. But after some time, when they explore more and more, they find out this is not. this is not true, this is not true, this is not related to this. So they go on exploring. So this, our Rishi Munis also, they taught us why they went to deep meditation. Okay, so Albert Einstein once again says that all the experiments happen in the mind first, then they happen in the laboratory. So in the mind, we need to create this type of curiosity in our students in the classroom. So a good teacher can obviously do this. So this is what I wanted to say. And all the scientists, those who have, they were not very good people who found answers. They were very good questioners. All the scientists were very good questioners. They asked a lot of questions. And some of the scientists were not very good students in the school. As I mean, they were not very good mark scorers, but they were very good scientists. They did research. I also have we see when we compare the students abroad and our students in India, we have a lot of rote memory. I mean, children just mug up and write in the exams, most of the students. And we encourage that, we depend on marks. So children stop asking questions. So I think in our education system also, we need to stop counting their marks, start counting their ability, their curiosity, and allow them to explore better options in life. Thank you very much. Thank you everyone for this golden opportunity to share a few thoughts of mine. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you for sharing those wonderful thoughts with us. I know it's not easy to be the last speaker with so many
I was very
speakers.
busy. I prepared very last moment. Yeah. Thank you.
Ma'am, a lot of the points tend to get taken up, but ma'am, thank you so much for beautifully delivering that. And Albert Einstein happens to be an inspiration to, I think, almost everyone who has logged in today. Thank you for sharing those wonderful anecdotes about the great man. Thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, that's all the speaking time we have for today. Unfortunately, due to paucity of time, we will not be able to take live questions. However, if you have questions, do send it to us over email, and we'll make sure that the questions reach the relevant speakers, and we will get back to you over email with their responses. Before we sign out, one reminder that the 0 hour debate is on. We have been extremely fortunate and extremely inspired by the kind of response it has had. Within just 3-4 days of opening up the registrations, more than 50 schools have signed up. Unfortunately, some of these schools were from Kenya, where the summer break has been announced. And so a few of these schools have backed out, leaving open a few slots. If any of your schools are interested in being part of this event, please register immediately. Get in touch with us and we will help you with the registration process. And we would love to have your school as part of this. It's gone way beyond what we expected. We have schools from all over the country, from abroad, with the Middle East and African schools joining in. We are looking forward to a month of debates between brilliant students and their teachers also participating in. So if you have not already registered, this is pretty much the last and final call for you to please register for the event, and we will try and accommodate as many schools as we can. With that said, it is now my job to hand you over to Achin for the vote of thanks. My name is Shubhayu Roy. I'm the co-founder of Notebook, and it's been a privilege hosting you today. Achin, over to you.
Yeah, I think we really had a very informative session, a great one, I think very inspiring. And I'm sure that, all our esteemed attendees, I'm sure they're left with some key takeaways. Very rightly mentioned, thus, goal can never be to sell to people who need what you have. The goal is to sell to people who believe what you believe. So I think it's a question of belief. It's a question of conviction. It's a question of being inquisitive and tirelessly asking the relevant questions. Burrett sir, great presentation. I think really set the tone for the day. In fact, every session after session, Burrett sir has been very instrumental in ensuring that we start off on a flying note. I think great presentation. Ms. Rekha Kapur, very nice example on experiential learning. Yes, we agree that child's curiosity should not reduce. Rote learning doesn't help. And that's exactly the belief with which Me and my team work at Notebook. Say no to rote learning. Very nice presentation, ma'am. Nurturing why through the art of thinking creatively and asking questions, like your concept, as well as igniting curiosity and conservation of natural resources. Practical project-based study. Yes, they're the need of the day. So we need more practical educators like you who are thought leaders. Ms. Asna, Nafeez, I think very informative, as well as, we all enjoyed each and every word. Very practical insights, information overload from every direction. Thus, in today's age, importance of why is even more important. Why is far more important, right? Children are born with curiosity, and all progress comes from asking why. And yes, you're completely correct when you say answers don't change the world, questions do. Dr. D'Souza, as Shubayu mentioned, we really liked your presentation in terms of your deliberation, in terms of sensibility and understanding. Great to know about it. Yes, fear of asking question. That's the worst thing. Thus, painful consequences from asking question. I think that's the worst form of suppression that can happen to a child. Thus, my way or highway is the worst form of bullying that can happen in a corporate or anywhere. It's important to take people along, important to nurture their curiosity, answer them logically. Exploring knowledge circle, giving a child space, and encouraging little ones to ask questions. I think that's the foundation based on which, a child's future is built. With this, I also thank the audience for supporting us in every session. It really keeps us motivated. And today, when we at Notebook, we share our happiness with you, with the fact that our millionth user has logged in. This is indeed a memorable moment for us. And this has only happened with your support. We are very proud to say that this has happened with word of mouth publicity alone. With esteemed educators like you recommending us through word of mouth publicity. It has been a wonderful journey, and we at Notebook are indeed humbled. We look forward to your participation in our next session, which is on Wednesday, 5 p.m. Thank you, take care, and goodbye.